The leader of the NDP apparently likes to shop at Metro, for which his brother's company is the chief lobbyist. So maybe the leader of the NDP can tell us. 24 Liberal MPs have lost confidence in the Prime Minister. Will the leader of the NDP finally vote for a carbon tax election?
Indeed, will the leader of the NDP finally vote for a carbon tax election? That's just a little bit of the hijinks and the comedy and the high drama that occurred in the House of Commons yesterday during question period after the Liberal caucus revolt. And when I come back, what's really happening behind the scenes with that caucus revolt? There's a lot more than you saw on CBC, on CTV Global, or even CPAC. There is a lot of dynamics going on. When we come back, more about that. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please like the station. Give us a thumbs up. We're beating YouTube suppression. I have to say that faithfully every day because I do have to say that faithfully every day. And we are beating Trudeau censorship. By the way, before I forget, guess what happened amidst all of the furor yesterday over the Liberal caucus revolt and the outrage in the House of Commons during question period? Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act, had its second reading yesterday, very quietly, almost surreptitiously. You have to look at the order paper, the House of Commons, to find out that's happening. And CPAC had a very brief announcement about it yesterday, saying what's coming up today in the House of Commons. C-63, the censorship bill, the online harms bill, the thought crimes bill, is at second reading. Will the Conservatives fight this bill with the energy that's required? Will they fight it vociferously, or will they say, hey, we've got our own bill, it's going to be just like this, except it won't be as bad? Better not, because they're going to disappoint a lot of us, including me. But we're not talking about that today, even though we have to mention it as many times as possible. So what happened yesterday? I mean, what was going on here in the House of Commons? And here's the lowdown. Yeah, all you saw on CBC and the mainstream media was, oh, Trudeau survived and the Liberal Party is united. Trudeau said that 3 or 4 times in question period. The Liberal Party is united. Yeah, like hell they are. So, okay, so 24 people signed this document. We thought there were up to 50. How many wanted to sign it but were afraid to? But we're still hearing talk of deadlines. These MPs, these dissident MPs, are giving Trudeau a deadline of October 28th, And we're seeing this reported elsewhere. Dissenting Liberals give PM until October 28th to make decision on future. And you're saying, well, what if? What happens if he makes the wrong decision? They want him to make the decision to get out. Now, October 28th is next Monday. So this is still brewing. This is big time drama at the House of Commons. We don't get a lot of big time drama at the House of Commons. This means by Monday, if Trudeau says I'm staying on, these Liberal MPs promise consequences. And you say, well, what kind of consequences can they offer? Non-confidence. They can vote against it. And just have a look at this. Now, all it's going to take really, just enough of those dissident MPs, and they start piling on. It attenuates because they gain momentum. That defeats the Liberal government. Here's the numbers. 338 seats. The Liberals only have 153. They lose 24 or more. Look at that. They need the NDP to survive. But if those dissidents are peeled away, they won't need the NDP. And the Bloc has already basically said they're finished with the government. They're finished. They want to go to an election because they think it's going to be good for them in Quebec. And why are these Liberal MPs still facing down Trudeau? Even though the mainstream media said, hey, Trudeau won. He's triumphant. That poll says everything. I showed you this yesterday. Nobody else is even mentioning this poll. This is vital to understanding the MPs. 57% of Canadians living in a Liberal-held riding want their MP to call on Justin Trudeau to resign and not run again. Now, that is massive. Liberal MPs say, hey, 57%, that means I can't win. That means I'm going to lose my riding if Justin Trudeau stays on. So that is the dynamics of what's going on here. Now, let's watch a little bit of question period here, because it was just classic. It was just classic. But first of all,
Soraya Ferrada Martinez, who is the Liberal National Coach.
All right, this was the lead up to question period, or to the caucus meeting yesterday. Everybody coming in, Trudeau looking nice and casual in his open neck shirt, coming through the door, going to caucus, smiling. He thinks he's got this under wraps. And of course, if you listen to Rosemary Barton, she kept saying, I think we have to understand that the Prime Minister is not one to expunge dissent in his party. He's one that he's open-minded. He wants to hear his critics. Thank you, Rosemary, for being such a great apologist for the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau. You do your job very well, if that is your job. And apparently that is.
Chair, I think that is the Prime Minister walking down the hallway there. So let's go back to that shot game if we can. There's Justin Trudeau.
There he is.
The Liberal Party is strong and united.
Well, there you go. 3 hours and 16 minutes.
Yeah, 3 hours and 16 minutes inside the caucus meeting. That's him coming out, getting ready for question period. And, of course, he thinks he's won. He thinks
into caucus. The Prime Minister says the Liberal Party is strong and united. We'll see if everyone agrees with that take.
Also, the opportunity is speaking about the good news of the interest rates falling.
Mr. Casey?
Clarify where things stand.
Nope.
Canadians out of the economy.
There's Sean Casey right there. This is the guy who really is leading the revolt in many ways, along with Ken McDonald.
So, do you? This is something I've heard.
But remember, Sean Casey was the guy who proudly stood beside Justin Trudeau in his riding in Prince Edward Island and said the days of the internal combustion engine are numbered. By 2030, we're going to get rid of all the gas-powered engines and we're going to go to EVs entirely. And I'm with Justin Trudeau 100%. Why did Sean Casey change his mind? Voters, reality, the reality. That's
heard from MPs that I've been speaking with over the last little while, and I'm sure you have read the reports and maybe even seen evidence of it yourself, of the efforts to try to force a leadership change at the top of your party. How widespread is the sentiment you've just expressed inside the Liberal caucus?
I would say it's wider than what meets the eye, honestly. There are a lot of people who have concerns. There are many who have a myriad of reasons not to express them, but those that have come to the same conclusion as me seem to be becoming more emboldened with the passage of time. I think that to a person, it's for the same reason as me, is because everywhere they go in their riding, that's what they're getting.
So you think a change in leadership potentially lowers the floor, but also potentially dramatically raises the ceiling for Liberals. Have you expressed this to the Prime Minister, to the Prime Minister's office? Do they know you feel this way?
Yes, I had a direct conversation with the Prime Minister on July the 5th and said to him many of the things that I'm saying to you now, including that in my view, history will be very kind to Justin Trudeau. I don't think that a turnaround in the economy is all of a sudden going to cause people to flock to the Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau again. It's hard to know. I think there is significant downside and limited upside, so I'm worried.
If not Justin Trudeau, who should lead the Liberal Party? Are you advocating for a particular candidate or just a leadership change?
I'm advocating for a leadership change, not for a particular candidate. I think that there are several very qualified people.
Anybody but Trudeau. So let's look at question period yesterday. And Trudeau at times appears to be completely unhinged. I know that's an overused expression. He appears to be detached from reality and just going on like he is grasping at straws. Yes, he does that routinely in question period, but there were some very bizarre moments in question period yesterday. And I've tried to capture some of them for you here, and I'll comment briefly when required or when it's useful.
Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, costs up, taxes up, crimes up, and according to 24 Liberal MPs, time is up. This Prime Minister has doubled housing costs, doubled the national debt, given us the worst economy in the G7. He's paralyzed Parliament with the cover-up of corruption, and 2 million people are lined up at food banks, but he cannot fix what he broke because his caucus is revolting. Will he call a carbon tax election today?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition is focused on politics, we're focused on delivering for Canadians the things that matter most, whether it's more money in their pockets with the Canada Carbon Rebate, more places at $10 a day childcare right across the country, dental care for seniors.
Okay, so what was this revolt all about? Partly, not just, but partly because Trudeau has nothing to offer that's new. So what does he go to question period yesterday and talk about? The same three things that the Liberal MPs are saying, this isn't washing anymore. They say free lunch for kids, dental care that nobody can access, the people who are too old to need dental care can access it, or the very young that don't need it yet, they can access it, or your pharmacare that is basically giving away free birth control and insulin. Like, that is the panacea for this guy, and he's got nothing else. But he repeats it again, and of course he's pulling out challenges, pulling up his sleeves, doing the work, and he's above politics. Remember, he's just there to govern, and he keeps saying this is his mantra now, and this is why he is going to go into an election. He's not going to prorogue. He is going to. He's convinced he's going to win this next election, not because there's any evidence for it, except in his own mind. So let's listen to
seniors and more Canadians of all ages as we move forward to deliver things that are easing pressures on the pocketbooks and building a strong economy for everyone. This is the work that we're doing, that we will continue to do. While the Leader of the Opposition tosses around empty slogans and plays politics, we'll stay focused on the things that matter to Canadians.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
24 Liberal MPs went to his caucus today to tell him that he's not worth the crime, cost, or corruption. They wanted to tell him that he's doubled housing costs, doubled the national debt, sent 2 million people to the food banks, but he wouldn't let them. He silenced half of the dissidents. In fact, some were intimidated so much so that even Rosemary Barton, the Prime Minister's favorite journalist, said people don't have phones in the room, and some people are going to the bathroom texting us. Mr.
I said this was going to happen before the caucus meeting, and it always happens in these caucus meetings. These MPs leave the room, surreptitiously send text messages to the journalists to complain about what's actually happening in the room. And Rosemary Barton actually admitted this. And I just love the way Poilievre drew this out.
Speaker, will the Prime Minister text those dissident Liberal MPs, tell them to come out of the bathroom and tell the whole world that he's not worth the cost?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, in our caucus, people have always been free to speak their mind and have different perspectives. What is interesting, Mr. Speaker, is nobody in the Conservative caucus seems to have spoken out when one of their members got an all-expenses-paid trip to an extreme anti-abortion church in Florida. Nobody spoke out when one of the members on their front bench went and dined with white nationalists, far-right German nationalists, and nobody spoke up and is continuing to speak up when their leader refuses to get a security clearance so he can deal with foreign interference.
Now, what was that about? It gets even worse, as Trudeau says some member of the front bench dined with a neo-Nazi. What a bit of BS that was. Of course, and I'll get to this as soon as we have a chance. But he's talking, of course, about Christine Anderson. But we'll get to that. This is a comical moment here. A very, very, very comical moment.
Honourable member from Burnaby South.
Has the Prime Minister actually ever been to a grocery store?
Both questions the leader of the NDP had. I've actually been to a grocery store with you, Mr. Speaker, in your riding a few years ago in Hull Elmer. And I've been to many grocery stores since.
In terms of housing, Mr. Speaker, we have created a program to invest in housing, affordable housing across our country. Mr. Speaker, we have created.
So, yes, Trudeau's gone to a grocery store with the Speaker. Let's a little more about this.
The leader of the NDP apparently likes to shop at Metro, for which his brother's company is the chief lobbyist. So maybe the leader of the NDP can tell us. 24 Liberal MPs have lost confidence in the Prime Minister. Will the leader of the NDP finally vote for a carbon tax election?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there wasn't a question for the government in that, but let me reiterate that multiple analysts, economists, and the Parliamentary Budget Officer have indicated that lowering inflation has made it easier on Canadians, and the price on pollution that delivers the Canada carbon rebate to Canadians right across the country and puts more money in their pockets is actually helping Canadians with affordability. But if the Leader of the Opposition really wanted to help with affordability, he wouldn't have voted against dental care. He wouldn't have voted against a national school food program that's saving hundreds of dollars a year to parents right across the country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, even Liberal MPs know now, because their constituents keep telling them, that the carbon tax is driving up the cost of food. They wanted to go to caucus today and tell the Prime Minister that Canadians are literally starving, some eating out of dumpsters because of the carbon tax. But he sent out his immigration minister to attack them, saying that they are, quote, garbage. What's garbage is the Prime Minister's record doubling housing costs, driving up food prices, and forcing people to eat out of dumpsters. Will he stop treating his own MPs and Canadians like garbage?
Now, of course, Immigration Minister Mark Miller on Sunday says this is garbage. MPs daring to question Justin Trudeau's orders, daring to question the great leader. Suddenly on Wednesday, he's saying, oh, he really admires the courage of these backbench MPs. Somebody got to him and say, you know, Mark, maybe it's not helpful if you call your own caucus colleagues garbage and say it's garbage to question the edicts of Justin Trudeau. Maybe that's not helpful. And apparently it got through to Mark Miller. But how does Mark Miller really feel? This is the man, of course, who loathes and despises Pierre Poilievre on a very personal level. He just hates the man. And he never misses a chance to get personal with Pierre Poilievre. So I think Poilievre is getting a little back here, because Mark Miller is a very angry, vindictive man who has made a mess of Canada's immigration system, as every Liberal immigration minister has in the past 50 years.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think the leader of the Conservative Party shouldn't be bragging that none of his MPs have asked him to get a security clearance so that he can actually protect his party from foreign interference. That none of his MPs have spoken out. That having one of their members go down to Florida on an all-expenses-paid trip by an extreme anti-abortion church is just fine for all of their MPs. And that, quite frankly, none of them have any issue with a member on their front bench dining with a neo-Nazi. Mr. Speaker, I would hope.
Now that is slander. And he could be sued if he wasn't standing in the House of Commons right there. Christine Anderson could sue him if he said that outside. Christine Anderson is not a neo-Nazi. I've met Christine Anderson. I have heard her speak. She does nothing in support of Nazism or Adolf Hitler. This is a really, really below the belt, beyond the pale remark from a very small man, a very small, diminutive man who won't be remembered well by history.
Oh, some of his members in his caucus would speak up about some of the problems.
And ask the honourable member from Wellington Halton Hills to please not speak out of turn.
You know, and I mentioned yesterday on my Redacted segment that Trudeau often talks like Joe McCarthy, Senator Joe McCarthy, who was always rooting out communists. And somebody called me out for that on Redacted, saying McCarthy was right. Yeah, he might have been right about communist influence, but his tactics often were very bad. And he often didn't have the names he claimed to. And that's the comparison I'm making, the methods. And Justin Trudeau, of course, who would call anything critical of communism as McCarthyite, acts exactly in the same way in smearing Conservative MPs without any evidence. He waves around imaginary lists. He claims that Conservative MPs are vulnerable to blackmail, that they're in the pay of foreign governments without any evidence at all. So he talks like the Joe McCarthy that Trudeau would have hated because McCarthy was against communism. And Trudeau, of course, arguably has been a neo-Marxist for much of his life and his real mentality. So that's the point I was trying to make yesterday when I said that. I know McCarthy was right about communism. His methods were often very bad. And that's why a lot of people say McCarthy was the best friend communists ever had, because he didn't do things in the right way. And Trudeau is aping his techniques and his tactics by calling somebody a neo-Nazi without any evidence or any sort of proof or any reason at all. But that's the way Trudeau operates. He smears people and he just walks away.
Repeatedly during this question. He's an honourable and very well-respected member. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, who has a lifelong record of racist outbursts, is now coming unglued on the floor of the House of Commons.
Yes, a lifelong record of racist outbursts as a blackface performer? Yes, Trudeau's a gifted blackface performer. He can put that in his resume, his acting entertainment resume. That's what Trudeau has done best in his life. He certainly hasn't led the country best. He hasn't been an able leader, but he's done a great bit of blackface, if that's the sort of thing you like, and apparently Trudeau does.
The question was about the 24 Liberal MPs in his caucus that are trying to speak out against his quadrupling of the carbon tax, not because they care about the cost of living of their constituents, but because they're worried they're going to lose the election. So if the Prime Minister is so confident in quadrupling the carbon tax, why won't he call a carbon tax election now?
I'm going to leave you with this. You think Trudeau had his wits about him yesterday, or was he just treading water? Was he grasping at straws as he always does? Was he really looking quite desperate? Listen to this exchange here. You can see Trudeau can't even get his own talking points right. He's forgotten the script. He lost his place in the script. He forgot his lines.
And housing costs. Now, on that subject, the Prime Minister created a $4 billion so-called housing accelerator that gave hundreds of millions of dollars to big city politicians across the country. Toronto got the money, and construction went down 20%. Winnipeg got the money, construction went down 15%. Vancouver got the money, construction went down 19%. Ottawa got the money, construction went down 10%. Mr. Speaker, when I was the housing minister, we built 194,000 homes. Why won't he follow my common sense example?
We'll take no less lessons from them on housing. They would rather pick fights rather than invest in the kinds of changes that are improving density and zoning, using public lands, accelerating red tape so that people can get more affordable housing built quicker right across the country. It takes actions and investments to build up this country. That's exactly what we're doing in responsible ways. All he's offering is fights with the provinces and municipalities and cuts to services Canadians rely on.
Mr. Speaker, he just accidentally told the truth. He said he's accelerating red tape. He sure is doing that, but he's not accelerating his math lessons. He's
accelerating red tape so that people can get more affordable.
Yeah, and that's a classic moment from question period, not related to the caucus revolt, but clearly shows Trudeau is not thinking straight. Well, even less straight than usual. This drama continues to unfold. People, don't think this has been brushed under the carpet. Don't think this has been hidden in the closet. Don't think Trudeau's walking away unscathed. No, he's not. There's more to come from this, because I'll say it again. And if you watched my segment on Redacted yesterday with Clayton, I think I made it quite clear. Why do Liberal MPs decide it's time for a leader to go? Not because they think it's necessarily in the best interest of Canada. Not even because they think it's in the best interest of the party, but because they think it's in the best interest of themselves. It is in the best interest of their political future. If they want to win re-election, if they want to stay as a member of parliament, and let's face it, it's a pretty good job, isn't it? It's well paid. You get an annual raise. It's not even debated anymore. It's an automatic annual raise in the House of Commons. And they don't even have to defend it, because it's just, well, what could we say? It didn't come up as a matter of debate. And we just, obviously, we took our raise. We'd be crazy not to. So they're getting very well paid for arguably at times doing next to nothing. And they can get away with that in safe ridings. But Liberal MPs are saying, hey, maybe my riding isn't safe anymore now that Justin Trudeau is so unpopular. The Canadians are just so fed up with him that I could lose the next time. And that's why they're saying enough of Justin Trudeau. And you think it's just 24 MPs? That could become 48 MPs overnight. That could become a huge block of dissidents who want Trudeau to go because they realize this is about their political future. And of course, they're also worried about the Liberal Party becoming not just the official opposition, but maybe even the third party. Maybe finishing behind the NDP, maybe even finishing behind the Bloc. That would put them in fourth place. This next election could be the elimination of the Liberal Party as a political force in Canada. And that would be Justin Trudeau's political legacy. Now, Sean Casey notwithstanding, history will not remember him well as a leader who is only responsible for two things people remember. What are those two things? Legalizing weed and invoking the Emergencies Act and coming down like a dictator on a peaceful protest, freezing people's bank accounts and looking like a thug. That's what Justin Trudeau will be remembered for. Not free lunch, not dental care, not pharmacare, not free birth control, none of this nonsense. He will be remembered as an authoritarian hypocrite who wandered around the world making an ass of himself, saying completely ridiculous things about other people being the problem and how Canada is a beacon of democracy. Well, of course, he's made it anything but in his 9 years here. It is time for Trudeau to go. I've been saying that for quite some time, and I know all of my viewers agree with that. But I would like to see the Liberal Party boot him out. I would love to see that happen, because that's what Trudeau deserves for what his behavior has been for the last 9 years. But I'll say the prediction again. If he doesn't go, and if the Liberals don't vote with the Conservatives in a non-confidence motion to defeat the government, Trudeau will stay on as leader. And he will fight the next election, because he is the personification of unalloyed narcissism. That's how I describe Justin Trudeau, and that's what fits him best. And that will continue. So thank you for watching today, folks. I really appreciate your viewership, and please keep supporting the station in whatever way you can. I'll be back again tomorrow with all the news you need to know, because we need to continue to resolve to resist. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, the online harms bill just went through second reading. That is the most odious piece of legislation in front of any legislature in the world right now. It's worse than anything that the UK has passed, anything Australia has passed, anything Ireland has passed, anything Scotland has passed, anything the US is contemplating on passing. It is bad, and we need to defeat it. Thanks for watching. I will be back tomorrow.